Good morning. My name is Mallory, and I'm so excited this morning to share some ideas on how you can take grocery store flowers and turn them into a beautiful centerpiece or entryway piece for your home. And a couple tips and tricks on how to keep the flowers healthy and just fun ways to design. So I started out here with 3 bunches of kind of mixed blooms. So I pulled them and put them in piles because for me that's helpful as I get started. So this is what we're working with. I then took some time to hop into the garden and collect a few things. So just some random flowers, grasses, and a couple greens over here that we weren't included. You can look anywhere in your backyard, on your street, as long as your neighbors are nice. And just take a few clippings, and that way it kind of gives new life to flowers that people are really familiar with. So it just creates something a little more individual and fun. So the technique I want to show you for designing today is designing with chicken wire. For years, people have used floral foam, which is that green, foamy, it's a one-time use plastic that's not great for the environment. So we have switched to using a lot of techniques that are more environmentally friendly and reusable. And these actually allow your flowers to last longer because you're able to change the water out easier, whereas floral foam holds bacteria and kills your flowers faster. So what I have here is just a plain old square of chicken wire. You can get a big roll at your local hardware store, anywhere. Some people just have some laying around in your garage. Check there first. And I cut a square about a little bit bigger than my vase, as you can see here. And I'm doing it in a clear vase so you all can see what the mechanics look like and what's happening in there, but you can always wrap branches around in there first and then put it in, or if you use a vase that isn't clear, you won't be able to see this at all. And then you just create a ball. So you go ahead and be careful, chicken wire bites. So watch your fingers while you do this. Try and work with the parts that aren't cut. And then you want it to be pretty tight as you jam it in there. And that is how you start. Then you're gonna go ahead and fill that up with water. Okay, so now that you have water in there, I always leave a little room for the stems so you don't overflow. And just make sure your chicken wire is below the line of your vase. You don't want it standing up above your vase because then you end up having stems that don't get into the water. And all flowers want is fresh water. So this is how you get started. My recommendation from here is then starting with your greens. Greens are a great way to make your shape and start and then plug your flowers in. If you put your flowers in first, oftentimes then when you put greens in, you end up damaging the flowers. So I always start with my greens. If you forage greens from somewhere, this is off of a tree branch that fell down in my neighborhood. If you're foraging greens, you want to find things with woody stems. If they have a soft stem, they usually won't hold up in water for very long. So just check for woody stems. And even though I just cut this not too long ago, I'm always going to give it a fresh cut before I put it in water. Then go ahead and remove any leaves that might go into the water. Any extra leaves that go in water just create more bacteria and kill your flowers faster. So you want a clean stem going in there. I want to make a centerpiece that's kind of oblong and not, and so all-sided, but more shaped for a long table. So I'm just going to start putting in some greens here. And just make sure as you're doing this, you're checking to ensure that those ends of the stems are in the water. So just making sure you're getting that down in there. So now we kind of have a base. I'm going to rotate so you can see. It's a little asymmetrical, a little funky, but as you start this, you can see where flowers, there's holes for where flowers can go. So we started here with our greens to get our base. From here, I'm going to go into some of our more filler flowers to create some texture. So I'm going to use these pom-pom mums, the status, and a few of these little carnations, which I love. They are long lasting. If you get these beautiful colors, they're antique and gorgeous. If you have the opportunity to shop at local farmers markets for your flowers, I really recommend it. Flowers are much happier when they don't have to travel from far. So if you can find some grocery stores do sell from local farmers, so check in and see if there are dahlias in the fall or peonies in the springtime. If your flowers come from somewhere down the street, they're gonna last you a lot longer than the flowers that get shipped here from Ecuador or Holland. So I really recommend taking a peek at that. Right now, I'm just kind of adding a little texture here and there. With your mums, don't be afraid to break them up. They don't have to be one big stem. You can play with kind of how those look and have smaller stems and then filler stems that kind of touch in other places. So I'm just making sure each stem is going in the water and giving everything a fresh cut and cleaning off the leaves as I do it. Okay, now I'm gonna put in some of the bigger flowers. So I'm gonna start with these sunflowers. They're just so happy. I love a flower that says hello. So don't be afraid to add height. Don't be afraid to play with texture and space. You've got a lot of room to work with and a lot of flowers to play with. So I also love grouping. So as you're doing this, you can see I kind of have all the sunflowers facing the same way. That can be way more impactful in a design. So instead of kind of polka dotting and putting everything in different places, if you create triangles with your specific flowers, that can help you a lot. Also, you don't have to use everything that came in your bunches. We had a lot of red flowers in these bunches, and I decided I didn't want red in my palette. So I put them in a little bud vase, and that can go in the bathroom later. Always nice to have flowers in different spots throughout your house. So now that I've tucked in some of these more focal flowers, let's get a few more in here. And flowers face, so they have little faces, they face for certain directions, so play with that. If you want to show off the back or if you want to show off the front, you can work with that. I'm going to balance this one with this sunflower here, and then tuck this guy in lower for a little more depth and dimension. Great. And then since I put a little pink of that carnation in here, I'm gonna fill a little more. Same thing I did with the mums. I'm just taking bits and pieces and filling in those spaces. So we'll fill here. Great. Then I want to add in a little more purple as I do this. I want to add in some flowers that aren't open yet. So longevity is something that is really hard when it comes to cut flowers. Your flowers are cut, they're going to die quickly. So the most you can do is make sure you're giving it fresh water every single day, dumping out the old water, putting in new fresh water. And I recommend putting in flowers that aren't bloomed yet, like these lilies. So these lilies won't open for maybe 3 days, but if they have fresh water and you keep giving them more water, these can last up to 2 weeks. So I also will give them a fresh cut every 3 or 4 days, and that will help you too. So I'm gonna put these lilies in with the intention of them opening up more. So I have a little spot over here where I can tuck this one in, and it just looks like a texture now, but it will eventually open up and be really beautiful in that space. So when you're shopping for flowers, I recommend you buy flowers that aren't fully open. That means they'll last longer, that means they'll be happier. If you're buying roses, go ahead and give them a squeeze like this. If they're soft, that means they're older. If they feel a little hard, like there's a little gumball in there, they're more new and they'll last a lot longer for you. All right, Then the last thing I'm going to put in is some texture. So I clipped this grass from outside, just something fun and doesn't look that exciting, but when you put it in clusters like this and pull off any of those excess leaves, give a trim, here you go. And look at that fun texture. Just makes it look a little less store-bought in a way. So you get a chance to feature some of the things that are growing in your neighborhood, or during fall, I love dried goods. So if you find any beautiful dried grasses, I have a collection of dried things in my house of just beautiful old flowers, poppy pods, anything like that. Those all can be saved and stored and thrown into arrangements as you're designing. So I'm going to put a few more in here. And here you go. This is a great centerpiece or entryway piece. Oh, I have a stem not in water. So as you're designing, feel free to play with color and texture and put it on your table and see how it feels. You can always make adjustments or add, and as things kind of die away, I'll pull them out and add in more of these grassy textures or some more of the longer lasting items like the status. So this is a perfect centerpiece or entryway piece for your home, and it's something that's completely unique and looks very different than the starting. Enjoy your flowers, and I hope it brings some brightness to your home.